The envelope trembled in Vanessa Harlow's hands. 27 photos. That's what the private investigator had delivered. 27 glossy images that confirmed what she'd suspected for months. Her husband's betrayal laid bare in full color. She spread them across the marble kitchen island where they'd celebrated their 10th anniversary just 2 weeks ago. In the harsh overhead light, she examined each one with clinical detachment. Photo 16 made her pause. Julian's hand on the small of the other woman's back, intimate, possessive. It was the same gesture he'd used when he'd first led Vanessa onto the dance floor at the charity gala where they'd met. Vanessa's breathing quickened, but she didn't cry. She'd done enough of that already. Instead, she picked up her phone and opened the banking app, methodically moving half of their joint account, 376 sao and 422, into her private account, the one Julian didn't know existed. Next, she typed out a text message to her husband. "Darling, I'm planning something special tonight. Be home by 7. Don't eat lunch. You'll want to save your appetite." She poured herself a glass of the Macallan 25, Julian's prized whiskey that he never shared with anyone, not even her, and took a long, deliberate sip. Vanessa wasn't just angry. She was calculating, and by tomorrow morning, everyone in Julian's life would know exactly what kind of man he truly was. 6 months earlier, Vanessa would have described her life as enviable. At 41, she had achieved what many would consider the perfect balance: a successful career as an intellectual property attorney, a loving 12-year marriage to Julian, and their beautifully restored Victorian home in Brookhaven. What she didn't have was a child. After 3 miscarriages, the most recent one just 8 months ago, they had stopped trying. The grief had carved something essential out of their relationship, leaving a hollow space that neither seemed able to fill. Julian had thrown himself into his work at the investment firm, putting in 60-hour weeks and bringing home record bonuses that they spent on exotic vacations and home renovations, as if luxury could somehow compensate for loss. "It's just us now," Julian had whispered one night as they lay in bed, his arms around her. And maybe that's enough. Vanessa had nodded against his chest, wanting desperately to believe him. The first sign came in February, when Julian started working late on Thursdays. Always Thursdays. The second was the new cologne, subtly different from his usual scent. Then came the password changes on his phone and laptop, for security concerns at work, he'd explained. Small things, easily rationalized, but they formed a constellation of doubt in Vanessa's mind. "You seem distant," her closest friend Natalie observed over lunch in early April. "Is everything okay with you and Julian?" "We're fine," Vanessa had replied automatically. "Just busy." But that night, she found herself searching through Julian's dresser while he showered. In the pocket of his least-worn suit jacket, she found a receipt from Katerina's, a trendy restaurant downtown that they had never visited together. 2 entrees, a bottle of expensive champagne, and 2 desserts. Dated the previous Thursday. Her hands had gone cold. "What are you doing?" Julian's voice came from the doorway, an edge of accusation in his tone. Vanessa turned, clutching the receipt. "Organizing your things. You need more space for your new clothes." He stared at her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Thanks, you don't have to do that." "I wanted to," she replied, slipping the receipt into her own pocket. The next morning, she called the private investigator. Dominic Pierce came recommended by a lawyer in her firm who specialized in divorces. He was discreet, thorough, and expensive. Vanessa didn't care about the cost. She needed to know. "Most people who come to me already know the truth," Dominic told her during their first meeting. "They just need evidence." "I need both," Vanessa said quietly. It took him less than 3 weeks to deliver. The woman's name was Elise Chambers, 32 years old, a client relationship manager at Julian's firm. According to Dominic's report, they had been seeing each other for approximately 4 months, meeting primarily at her apartment in Midtown and occasionally at business conferences out of town. "Do you want details of their communications?" Dominic had asked gently when he handed over the file. I have access to text messages. Vanessa had shaken her head. The photos were enough. For 2 days after receiving the evidence, she did nothing. She went to work, made dinner, slept beside her husband, all while the knowledge burned inside her. On the third night, when Julian announced he had to go to Chicago for a client meeting, Vanessa simply nodded. "When will you be back?" she asked, her voice perfectly neutral. "Friday afternoon," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. She checked his calendar on their shared family account while he packed. There was no Chicago trip listed. Later, she tracked his phone's location to an airport hotel, 10 miles from their home. Elise's social media showed her checking in at the same hotel's restaurant that evening. Something hardened in Vanessa that night. Not just her heart, but her resolve. She'd built her legal career on meticulous preparation and strategy. Now she would apply those same skills to dismantling the life she had shared with Julian, but on her terms, with maximum impact. He wouldn't just lose her, he would lose everything else as well. First, she consulted discreetly with Mason Reeves, a divorce attorney whose ruthlessness was legendary in Atlanta legal circles. "Georgia is an equitable distribution state," Mason explained. "Since you've been married 12 years and you're both high earners, the division of assets will likely be close to even. Unless what? Unless we can prove financial misconduct or demonstrate that his actions have negatively impacted your joint finances." Vanessa thought of the new Porsche Julian had purchased 3 months ago. The extravagant gifts he'd been buying, probably for Elise. The unexplained withdrawals from their savings. "I believe I can prove that," she said. Next, she met with Julian's boss, Richard Caldwell, under the pretext of planning Julian's upcoming birthday celebration. Richard had been Julian's mentor for years and had attended their wedding. "He's been our star performer this quarter," Richard told her proudly. The Hamilton client alone brought in 7 figures. "Julian's in line for partnership consideration next year." "That's wonderful," Vanessa replied with a practiced smile. "He's been working so hard." "The travel's been tough, I imagine," Richard continued. "But those conferences in Phoenix and Miami were essential for cementing the Hamilton relationship." Vanessa's smile never faltered, even as she noted that Julian had told her those trips were to Dallas and Boston. Over the following weeks, she gathered information methodically. Bank records, phone logs, email confirmations of hotel stays and restaurant reservations. She discovered that Julian had opened a separate credit card 6 months ago, one she knew nothing about. The statements showed jewelry purchases, weekend getaways, and daily coffee orders from the shop near Elise's apartment. The final piece fell into place when she installed monitoring software on their home computer, something she'd never imagined doing before. It took less than a day to capture Julian's passwords to various accounts, including his private email. There she found everything: intimate exchanges between Julian and Elise, plans for their future, and most devastatingly, discussions about how and when Julian would leave his marriage. "She's still fragile from the last miscarriage," Julian had written 2 months earlier. "I can't leave yet, but soon." Vanessa had stared at those words until her vision blurred. Not from tears, but from pure, clarifying rage. That's when she began planning her trap. It would require perfect timing, irrefutable evidence, and every ounce of self-control she possessed, and it would begin with a dinner invitation. At 6:55 p.m., Julian's key turned in the lock. Vanessa stood in the dining room, surveying her handiwork one final time. The table was set beautifully, their best china, crystal glasses, and the sterling silver they'd received as wedding gifts. Candles flickered, casting a warm glow that belied the coldness she felt inside. "Nessa?" Julian called out, using the nickname that had once made her heart skip. "Something smells amazing." She took a deep breath and stepped into the foyer. "Welcome home." Julian's expression brightened as he took her in. The sleek black dress she knew he loved, her hair styled the way he preferred. He moved to kiss her, but she turned subtly, offering her cheek instead. "What's the occasion?" he asked, following her into the dining room. "Did I forget an anniversary?" "No," Vanessa replied evenly. I just wanted us to have a special evening. It's been a while since we really talked. Julian loosened his tie, an uncertain smile playing at his lips. This looks incredible. Wine? She offered, already pouring a glass of his favorite Bordeaux. As they sat down to the first course, scallops with a saffron sauce that she had spent hours perfecting, Julian began to relax. He talked about work, a new client prospect, office politics. Vanessa nodded at appropriate intervals, asked the right questions, all while watching the clock. PM. Right on schedule, Julian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then quickly turned it face down. Aren't you going to check that? Vanessa asked mildly. It could be important. Julian shifted in his chair. It's just work. Nothing that can't wait. Work. On your personal phone? Something flickered in his eyes, the first hint of wariness. Some clients have my personal number. I see, Vanessa said, standing to clear their plates. Let me bring out the main course. In the kitchen, she checked her own phone. The message from Dominic confirmed that everything was proceeding as planned. She returned with 2 plates of perfectly seared steak. Julian's favorite meal. This is really wonderful. Nessa, Julian said, cutting into the meat. I've missed your cooking. Have you? She asked, watching him closely. I thought perhaps you'd been enjoying other culinary experiences lately. At Katerina's, for instance? Julian's knife stilled. What? Or maybe at Le Bistro? I hear their chocolate soufflé is exceptional. Though I wouldn't know, you've never taken me there. Julian's face paled slightly. I've had some business dinners. You know how it is. Of course, Vanessa nodded, taking a sip of wine. Business. Like your trip to Chicago last month that curiously never left Atlanta? The silence that fell between them was deafening. Julian set down his utensils, his appetite visibly gone. Vanessa, no, she interrupted, her voice dangerously soft. Don't insult me with lies. She reached beside her and placed a single photograph on the table. Julian and Elise entering her apartment building, his hand intimately placed on the small of her back. Julian stared at it, then at her, his expression cycling rapidly through shock, guilt, and finally, a calculating defensiveness that Vanessa recognized from his toughest negotiations. I don't know what you think you've discovered, but her name is Elise Chambers, Vanessa cut in, her voice steady despite the thundering of her heart. 32, works at your firm. You've been sleeping with her for at least 4 months. You've taken her to Phoenix and Miami. Trips you told me were to Dallas and Boston. You bought her a sapphire necklace for her birthday last month, $3,200 from Cartier. You charged it to the secret credit card you opened in December. Julian's face drained of color. How did you? That's not important, she continued. What matters is that while I was grieving our child, you were planning your escape. She's still fragile from the last miscarriage, she quoted his email verbatim. I can't leave yet, but soon. Julian's eyes widened in recognition of his own words. Nessa, please, he began, his voice cracking. It wasn't supposed to. It just happened. I was lost and you were so distant after the— Don't you dare, Vanessa hissed, the first real emotion breaking through her composed facade. Don't you dare blame our baby. Julian reached across the table for her hand, but she pulled away. We can fix this, he pleaded. I'll end it with her. I'll do anything. We can go to counseling, take time off, travel. Is that what you want? Vanessa asked, suddenly thoughtful. To save our marriage? Something like hope flickered across Julian's face. Yes, of course. This thing with Elise, it was a mistake. You're my wife. We have a life together. Vanessa nodded slowly, as if considering. I need to know everything, Julian. No more lies. Starting with your phone. Julian hesitated, then unlocked his phone and slid it across the table. Here, look at whatever you want. As Vanessa picked it up, Julian's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Elise's name flashed on the screen. Vanessa smiled thinly and answered, putting it on speaker. Hello, Elise. Silence, then a confused female voice. Who is this? This is Vanessa Harlow. Julian's wife. More silence. Then, I need to speak with Julian. He's right here, Vanessa replied coolly. We were just discussing your relationship. Julian lunged for the phone, but Vanessa moved faster, standing and backing away from the table. Elise! Julian called out, his voice strained. I'll call you back. This isn't… Actually, Vanessa interrupted. This is exactly what it looks like, Elise. Julian has been exposed, and now he's promising to end things with you and recommit to our marriage. Classic, isn't it? Julian? Elise's voice was small. Is that true? Julian looked trapped between the two women, even though one was only present through the phone. Elise, it's complicated. No, it's quite simple, Vanessa continued. He's been lying to both of us. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And that's when the doorbell rang. Julian's head snapped toward the sound. Who's that? Vanessa checked her watch. Right on time. She walked to the front door, Julian following close behind. When she swung it open, Elise Chambers stood on their doorstep, mascara smudged beneath her eyes, clutching her purse like a shield. You invited her here? Julian whispered incredulously. Come in, Elise, Vanessa said, ignoring him. We have a lot to discuss. Elise hesitated, then stepped inside, her eyes darting between Vanessa and Julian. She was pretty in a conventional way, younger, softer, but with an intelligence in her gaze that Vanessa had not expected. I don't understand what's happening, Elise said, her voice steadier than her appearance suggested. Please, join us in the dining room, Vanessa replied, gesturing down the hallway. There's plenty of food, though Julian seems to have lost his appetite. In the surreal scene that followed, the three of them sat at the dining table, Vanessa at the head, Julian and Elise on either side. The candles had burned lower, casting dramatic shadows across their faces. Would you like some wine, Elise? Vanessa offered, as if this were any normal dinner party. Elise shook her head. I think I need to understand why I'm here. That's fair, Vanessa nodded. I invited you because I believe in efficiency. And in informed decisions. She placed a folder on the table and removed several documents, arranging them meticulously. Julian has been living a double life, she began, her tone almost professional, like she was presenting a case in court. With me, he's been the grieving husband, claiming to recommit to our marriage after our third miscarriage last year. With you, Elise, he's been planning a future, a fresh start. Elise's gaze fell to the table. He told me you were separating, that it was just a matter of timing and finances. I suspected as much, Vanessa replied. That was a lie, as you can now see. Julian's jaw tightened. This is between us, Vanessa. There's no need to drag Elise into it. But she's already in it, Vanessa countered. Deeply. In fact, she deserves to know exactly what kind of man she's been sleeping with. Vanessa slid a document toward Elise. This is a record of withdrawals Julian has made from our joint investment account over the past 6 months. Almost $47,000. Money we had saved for fertility treatments. Actually, Elise's eyes widened as she scanned the paper. And this, Vanessa continued, producing another document, is an application for a mortgage on a property in Savannah, dated last month. Julian listed himself as single. Were you planning to live there with Elise, Julian? A fresh start on the coast? Julian's face had turned ashen. How did you get that? I'm very thorough, Vanessa replied simply. Oh, and Elise, you should also know that Julian's been embezzling from the Hamilton account. The room went completely still. That's a lie, Julian hissed, but his eyes betrayed his panic. Is it? Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Richard Caldwell doesn't think so. In fact, the forensic accountants finished their audit yesterday. She produced another document. They found discrepancies totaling just over $200,000. Funds that were supposedly going to marketing consultants but were actually diverted to an offshore account. Your offshore account. You talked to Richard? Julian's voice was barely audible. I did. He was devastated. Apparently, he was considering you for partnership. Vanessa turned to Elise. Did you know about the embezzlement, Elise? Because as a relationship manager who worked directly with the Hamilton account, you could be implicated. Elise's face drained of color. What? No. I didn't. I would never. Of course you wouldn't, Vanessa said softly. But would anyone believe that? You've been having an affair with the man managing those funds. The optics are problematic. Julian stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. Stop this, Vanessa, now. You've made your point. Have I? Vanessa remained seated, perfectly composed. I'm not sure I have. Because here's what's going to happen next, Julian. You're going to lose your job. There will likely be criminal charges. You'll certainly lose your professional licenses. Our assets will be frozen during the investigation. She turned to Elise. And your career in financial services will be over before it really began. Elise looked stricken. But I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, besides sleeping with a married man who was stealing from clients? Vanessa finished for her. Yes, besides that. Julian began pacing, running his hands through his hair. This is insane. You can't do this. I already have, Vanessa replied. The evidence was delivered to the firm's ethics committee this afternoon. And to the SEC? Julian stopped pacing. You're bluffing, Vanessa smiled thinly. Check your work email. With shaking hands, Julian pulled out his phone and logged into his company account. His face crumpled as he read. You've ruined me, he whispered. No, Julian. You ruined yourself. I'm just making sure you face the consequences. Elise stood up suddenly, gathering her purse. I need to go. I can't be part of this. Running won't help, Vanessa told her. Your name is already in the reports. You bitch, Julian snarled, his composure finally shattering. You planned all of this. You set a trap. I did, Vanessa acknowledged calmly. And you walked right into it, just like you've walked into every opportunity your privilege has afforded you. Taking what you wanted without a thought for who you hurt. Julian lunged toward her then, his face contorted with rage. Vanessa didn't flinch. Instead, she pressed a button on her phone which had been recording the entire conversation. I wouldn't, she said quietly. Assault charges would only make things worse for you. Julian froze, his fists clenched at his sides. What do you want from me? Vanessa stood slowly, gathering the documents back into the folder. I want a divorce, obviously. But more than that, I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything you value. Just like you made me feel when I found those photos. She turned to Elise, whose mascara was now streaked down her cheeks. As for you, Elise, I'm willing to provide a statement clarifying that I believe you were unaware of the financial improprieties. It won't save your job, but it might save your future career. In exchange, I want copies of all communication between you and Julian. Everything. Elise glanced at Julian, then back at Vanessa. Why would you help me at all? Because you're also a victim of his lies, Vanessa replied, though a more willing one than I was. The doorbell rang again. Julian looked up in alarm. Who is that now? That would be Dominic Pierce, my private investigator, Vanessa explained. And Officer Reyes from the Financial Crimes Unit. They're here to discuss the evidence. Julian's face crumpled. Nessa, please. We can work this out. I'll do anything. For the first time that evening, real emotion broke through Vanessa's careful composure. It's far too late for that, Julian. You had 12 years to be the man I thought you were. Instead, you became this. She gestured around the room, at the ruins of their marriage, at the woman he'd betrayed her with, at the evidence of his crimes. This is who you really are, and now everyone will know it. She walked to the door, head high, leaving Julian and Elise in the wreckage of the lives they'd thought they were building. 1 year later, Vanessa sat across from Natalie at their favorite cafe, sunlight streaming through the windows as they shared a bottle of champagne. To new beginnings, Natalie toasted, raising her glass. And to justice, Vanessa added with a small smile. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago. Julian had lost everything, his job, his professional standing, and after a guilty plea to avoid a lengthy trial, his freedom. He was serving 18 months in a minimum security prison for financial fraud. Elise had disappeared from Atlanta entirely, reportedly moving back to her hometown in Oregon. The statement Vanessa had provided as promised had kept her from being charged as an accessory, but her reputation in financial services was irreparably damaged. "Have you heard from him at all?" Natalie asked carefully. Vanessa shook her head. "Not since the sentencing. His lawyer handles any necessary communication. And how are you, really?" Vanessa considered the question. The past year had been a crucible, painful, transformative, clarifying. The betrayal still stung when she allowed herself to think about it, but those moments were increasingly rare. "I'm reclaiming myself," she said finally. Piece by piece. She had sold their house, too many memories, too much Julian in every room, and bought a sleek downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and no trace of their shared past. Her law practice was thriving. She had even been approached about a partnership opportunity at a prestigious firm specializing in white-collar criminal defense. "And the clinic called yesterday," she added, her voice softening. "They have a donor match." Natalie reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Oh, Vanessa. That's wonderful." After the divorce, Vanessa had decided to pursue single motherhood through a sperm donor. At 42, she knew the odds were against her, but she refused to let Julian's betrayal rob her of the chance to be a mother. "It might not work," Vanessa cautioned, "but I'm going to try." "If anyone deserves this, it's you," Natalie assured her. As they finished their champagne, Vanessa's phone buzzed with an email notification. She glanced at it, then put her phone away with a satisfied expression. "Good news?" Natalie asked. "You could say that?" Vanessa replied. "Remember Mason Reeves, my divorce attorney? He just informed me that the court denied Julian's appeal for early release. He'll serve his full sentence." Natalie studied her friend's face. "Does that make you happy?" Vanessa considered the question carefully. "Not happy exactly, but resolved. There's a difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is what I wanted that night at the dinner table. Justice is what happened in the courtroom." As they left the cafe, stepping into the bright spring afternoon, Vanessa felt a weight lifting, one she'd carried for so long she'd almost forgotten it was there. That evening, she stood on the balcony of her new home, watching the sunset over the Atlanta skyline. On her coffee table lay the folder of paperwork for the fertility clinic, consent forms, medical histories, donor information. Tomorrow she would begin the process. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Hello, Vanessa." Julian's voice was instantly recognizable, though diminished somehow. "Please don't hang up." She said nothing, but she didn't end the call. His voice caught. "I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. Not because of where I am or what I've lost, but because of what I did to you. You deserved better." The silence stretched between them, filled with 12 years of history, the good and the unforgivable. "Yes," she finally said. "I did. Are you—" He hesitated. "Are you happy now?" Vanessa looked at the fertility clinic paperwork, at her new home, at the life she was building from the ashes of the one he had destroyed. "I'm getting there," she answered truthfully. "Goodbye, Julian." She ended the call before he could respond, setting the phone down with finality. There was nothing more to say. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new possibilities. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in longer than she could remember, Vanessa felt ready to face it, not as Julian's wife or Julian's victim, but simply as herself, and that, she realized, was the most brilliant trap of all. The freedom she had created from the wreckage of betrayal. Not just surviving, but transforming. Not just escaping, but becoming. The ultimate revenge wasn't in Julian's downfall. It was in her rise from the ashes. As night fell over the city, Vanessa Harlow closed the balcony door, leaving the past outside where it belonged.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.